Hi, my name is Paul.
And I'm Brooke.
And our guest today never went to art school and describes his early work as horrendous. You guys be the judge on that.
Designer and illustrator Luke Choice shares the dirty little secret to his success, the smudge tool.
All this and more
on Make It.
All right, welcome everybody. Here we are with Luke Choice.
Pleasure.
Illustrator, artist.
Yep.
I noticed a little bit of an accent.
Yeah, the accent will come through.
Yeah, it's
not
actually,
as strong as
when
it
we're
used
not
to
on
be.
camera, he doesn't have an accent.
Right, right.
You guys know.
Just trying to be
But-
exotic.
Well, I don't know about you, Paul, but I usually judge people by questions they answer. So, favorite color combo?
Pink and black.
Oh,
Ooh.
favorite color. Pink and black.
Nice.
I wouldn't have guessed. I was guessing
Yeah.
pink. All right, so rapid fire. PB&J or Vegemite?
Definitely not Vegemite.
Ooh, so
I
probably.
might offend some Australians, but I can't stand it.
So, another one. You recently moved to LA, but you've also lived in New York. So, New York or LA?
New York will always be a big thing for me. It's very close to my heart. But I feel like LA is good for my point in my career at the moment. So
Well, what about favorite comic book?
the Infinity Gauntlet, which
Infinity-
is it was the first comic I was ever given as a kid by my cousin, which kind of started my love of all things graphic, I guess.
So, speaking of that, I know that you taught yourself 3D in Cambodia.
Yeah, I found myself in Cambodia for about a year, and it allowed me a bit more relaxed schedule. I was always trying to fake it, I think, so I took my time and just sort of learned it, doing a bunch of tutorials online, and just sort of like started the love affair.
How did you find yourself in Cambodia? I might find myself at the grocery store. I don't find myself in Cambodia.
Yeah, I mean, I was in
curious.
the UK for a little bit, and then my ex-wife she got some work out in Cambodia
Okay.
doing humanitarian work. So
Cool.
I was like, sure, why not?
And
Sounds like a
always
great
down.
opportunity.
yeah, and of all places, you said you just started learning online through tutorials.
That was it. I mean, I feel like everyone's been through the same problems. So if you Google search any problem, it's always going to be there. So that was a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no traditional education then.
No.
Wow. So just learn everything entirely online, inspiring people. Because I have to say, my favorite, my design crush. Can I say that out loud? Because this guy's stuff is amazing.
It is
You said it to
amazing.
everybody.
And you're like, no, I don't. I swear to you. And you inspire people. You obviously have some amazing work. It does kind of venture into 3D, but you also work in Photoshop as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of Illustrator work back in the early days, and then I just found like I love mixing colors so much that Photoshop is where it's at for me.
How do you decide whether, or maybe it's just a sort of a natural process, but whether you decide to go 3D or not from the start?
Yeah, I think I love knowing different programs because I have so many different briefs come through that it's kind of like I like to approach everything based on its merit and thinking about like the final execution and what would best serve that. I mean, typography is such a big part of my work that I just kind of create elements and then figure out ways to turn that into typography and treatments, and just experimentation always leads me down a path I'm not expecting.
I could easily recognize your stuff, and I want everything here that I see on the table, even to be a font, by the way, that I can purchase as a multicolor font.
Oh my
Which
gosh.
you can load up in Photoshop, by the way.
Yeah, that's
There you
what
go.
you want.
Yeah, I made
Do you
my
have a
first
favorite font?
The tried and true is Futura for me. I usually start like in the early days. I used to create my own fonts because there wasn't enough options out there, and I was doing so much like nightclub posters and band stuff. So it was kind of everybody wanted their own unique font for everything. So that's where all the sort of typography really was born. It was just sort of starting with the base font and then just pushing and pulling and tweaking things
Yeah.
and going from there.
I think that's
Super
what
cool.
that's what most designers do. You might have 1,000 on your computer,
Yeah.
but you use 5, and then
Yeah.
you're modifying Helvetica or Futura
Yeah, exactly,
or
yeah.
whatever like that.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to just like kind of map your trajectory. So Cambodia, learning all this stuff, like emerging a beautiful butterfly. I don't know, but how were you like? I want to say how were you discovered, but I don't know if that's the right.
Yeah, what was
terminology.
sort of like the the lights on point for you, or?
My first break was with Ministry of Sound. I was basically just trolling MySpace, looking for DJs in Sydney to like do their logos and just try and like get in the music industry there. And then I emailed the right guy who was the general manager, and he's like, email Karen, and we're looking for new designers. And I pitched on that and won that, and I literally just finished a new album cover for him last night. So it's been like 10 years of a great relationship with them, and they've been that kind of base that's allowed me to go freelance for a few years and sort of explore. And I think that's where a lot of my bold sort of dynamic style comes from, is working for those guys in the music industry.
Right.
Yeah.
So your Velvet Spectrum, where does that name come from?
Yeah.
I wish
It is a really great
I wish
name.
that was an interesting story, but it was literally, I think I was going to be Spectrum, but then there was like a trashy nightclub in Sydney called Spectrum. So I was trying to think of some way to, sort of make it a little bit more unique. And I saw a Velvet Underground poster, and I was like, that's the word I was looking for. But I feel like I don't know whether it sort of led my aesthetic that way, but I feel like it just complements what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah.
So I constantly think of getting rid of it because I feel like I have to grow up or something, but
No,
everyone's
it's
like,
so
just keep
good.
it.
And you're totally correct, because I was trying to think of a word to describe your work, and it's kind of like lush
Okay.
is the word that keeps coming to
I'll
my
run with
head.
that.
Like it's
That's
very
cool.
like colorful and like fun and nice, and I think Velvet Spectrum is a good complement to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we actually, I don't know, can we actually take a look at some of these? I
Yeah.
mean, you just mentioned this, so I feel like holding this up and...
Well, so this one was actually the first 3D project that I ever got paid for. So it was kind
Oh
of...
wow!
Is that Cinema 4D?
So this was done in
or
Cambodia.
What were you?
Cinema 4D, yeah. So it was kind of like a lot of exploration, and then sort of lights on was like, I can do this kind of thing, and it just started the sort of 3D typography stuff that I did. But I mean, I see this now, and I just see everything that's wrong with it. So,
Right.
but yeah, it was just really fun to sort of get in and like figure out how to use it in different ways. And,
Yeah.
and I was always trying to mimic this sort of stuff, in Illustrator and Photoshop. So
Yeah, so you reached that point where you're like, I want this certain look. I might not be able to do it in this program, therefore I'm going to try, hey, if it means Cinema 4D, then let's figure this out.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, because I think, you look at this, and I think it's kind of interesting. Probably today in Photoshop, you could do something similar to
Yeah.
this. But you look at that, and this is very obviously 3D, because I think of the wrapped material. You talked about New York a little bit. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yes. So when I was in Cambodia learning 3D, and then so I saw Vault 49 basically tweeted that they were looking for new designers, and for me, like they were the inspiration for me from the beginning.
Super cool.
I had so many prints like framed up on the wall back in Mum's house, and they were doing a lot of set build, paper cut type artwork at the time, and I just came in and I was like, well, we can make this in 3D, be much more flexible and time efficient. So that kind of like started 3D for them.
So you were the innovator for that. That's so cool.
But how are they like, oh yeah, you like, well, how do you know 3D? I learned on YouTube, right?
In Cambodia.
In Cambodia.
No big deal.
But I think it was great, because then
Which
I
is
was
awesome.
working with other illustrators and then teaching them. So I think it had a really fresh sort of perspective for 3D art.
That's
How did
so
you get
cool.
how did you get like a portfolio together to show off, kind of?
The original portfolio I had was 21st invites for all my friends. So that was how I learned
That's so
Photoshop
good.
and Illustrator.
Okay.
And so it's always been just sort of faking it till you make it, really. I was doing lots of fake band posters, and I'd come up, I think that's why I love doing typography and all these strange messages, because I was constantly creating weird bands that didn't exist, because I wish I had some musical talent, but I just posed.
I know, I want one of these on a t-shirt or
I know.
something.
And I think Velvet Spectrum would be kind of a cool band name. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that I've been stalking you on Instagram, but I love some of the new recent exploit. We're
stalking you.
We're
Let's
stalking.
not.
That's what it's all
put it
about.
out
You know?
there.
It's
I'm
a-
gonna-
Some of the
I'm gonna heart
recent
that.
explorations of 3D, like kind of like scenes or environments, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I love working. I mean, nature is a big inspiration for a lot of my work, and I try and find ways to use the formations, but in a real surreal, unexpected way. I'll always put something in there that's sort of hidden, whether it's an elk or a little person, just to sort of give these worlds some context.
Yeah.
And sort of, I've always been fascinated by scale and the sort of, extremes of it. So yeah, they're fun for me. And I do so much work just for my own enjoyment. It's like people ask what your hobby is, and I just kind of do work as a hobby.
Do renders.
Yeah.
Let's see what I'm going to render tonight. I think you
Yeah.
actually scrolled through your Instagram. You did. Did you do what did you do concerning type? 365 days of type or something like
36 days.
that?
Oh, yeah.
365 a lot of days of type. 36.
Yeah, 36 days of type. Yeah, they actually met those guys in Barcelona when I was out there for Off Fest. It's such a great initiative where I could test out one letter form and try and do something different and then find ways to incorporate it into new work. And I mean, I don't think I've ever completed 36 days. I just
Well, and that
life
alone is
overtakes.
encouraging to me.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. It's fun getting inspired by your work, but really, it's time to...
Let's take a look. Can you show us a little sneak?
Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome.
I'll show you guys how it's done.
Sweet.
I kind of stumbled across this technique by accident. So the alabaster stone was just like an old alias that I came up with to do some like weird experimental stuff. But I kind of just played with the smudge tool one day, and this ended up, and then I was like, how can I turn this into typography? So I usually start with one artwork that I've already created that has, you know, multiple colors, and it has a lot of, you know, highlights and shadows. So it adds a lot more texture to the fonts. So I create a new layer, go to my smudge tool, and then I typically choose just like, you know, a brush, you know, that has a little bit of texture to it. So I do different ones for all different types of pieces that I do.
Yeah, I know. And we saw another piece that kind of looked like you used the star.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way.
So I usually go into the brush presets and I just play around, see how things react differently. But I mean, this is one that I typically use.
Okay.
And then I just mess with the settings, shape dynamics, you know, so it doesn't sort of come to too much of a point.
Right.
And then all you have to do is make sure you check sample all layers. So that'll actually think about what's happening below. And that's it.
Oh my
really.
gosh, this is
There we
so
go.
cool.
Yeah.
And then I'll just
Boy.
mess around with the,
Can you make a bee?
yes. So I just kind of go over and over again.
And are you sensitive to where you first click, but not so much? I mean, it's grabbing that whole sample area the size of the brush.
Yeah, so the technique will change as soon as you mess with the strength.
That looks so sick,
see.
and
I know.
I think it's ridiculous.
So you can see, like, I drop the strength and then do it again. And there's a
That's
lot more
beautiful.
sort of
That's
like
so
fading.
cool.
So it's a lot of back and forth with the technique.
And then turning off that background. Oh, there we go. That's you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
And then
so
you-
simple.
I know. Look, you're supposed to tell
so
us this
simple.
is really hard. Then do you
Why?
ever,
This is supposed to be a rendering that takes 4 hours.
Yeah, no.
And then I...
Faking
so do
it.
you ever play with the contrast and saturation and afterwards? I mean, because this
Yeah.
one is super saturated.
Well, I think that's the thing is, like, when I discovered the technique, I realized it needed a lot more to get it to a point of like a finished product.
Sure.
So there's a lot of retouching that'll go in with color corrections and, you know, playing with the levels. And I mean, my work, everything has selective color, and I just go straight to the neutrals and I add more magenta and pull out yellow, or,
Yeah.
you know, I create that sort of warmth in the middle. So I think that's sort of something that has like my sort of touch
Yeah.
to it, is playing around with that.
Yeah.
And this is after you learned 3D to a degree, is that correct?
Yeah.
So why didn't you do this in 3D again?
Well,
Because it looks 3D to me. So I'd
Right.
think, okay, you
Yeah.
extruded a path.
I'm
something
always
on the
working
path.
in different programs, doing different things, and I think this has that sort of vibrant energy that a lot of my work goes for. And you know, I typically do like band names or song lyrics and things like that, just trying to capture that sort of intensity, and just finding different ways to do it. Because you know, I could change up the brush and pick like, I mean, you can do so many different things. There's some that kind of end up looking like new layer.
Okay.
You know, there's just so much more you can
yeah.
do with it.
Yeah,
That's
and then again, it
crazy.
just still has that sort of like 3D, that depth to it.
Yeah,
But these are all the stock brushes.
they are.
Right?
Yeah,
So you're just
yeah.
manipulating the settings
Yeah.
and going with it. Which is so
Wow.
funny. I look at this and I see, okay, Cinema 4D, and I got to extrude something along a path. It's going to be, I got to render it and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like endless stuff. And yet you're using, what, the smudge brush that has been in Photoshop for I don't know how long.
Right.
And everybody was like, oh, smudge brush. Because if you were anybody else and told me that, I'd
Yeah.
be like, no, you're lying.
Yeah.
So do you feel like learning 3D taught you more about lighting, or do you still? Because I feel like when I'm in Photoshop trying to do lighting stuff, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm. I can guess it, but I don't know that it's right. Someone who knows what lighting actually does.
Yeah, I like 3D kind of transformed my whole perspective on everything because I'm so aware of where light is cast and shadows and I observe the world so much more than I used to before I learnt 3D.
Right.
So I'm constantly looking at textures and sort of wondering how I would construct that in 3D and
Right, and
Yeah.
you do things like use the smudge tool to
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
letters.
I'm just
Which
so-
that was supposed to
Yeah.
be such a longer demo and more complex, and I was supposed to be taking notes, and yet smudge brush. Oh, what special brushes did you load in?
Yeah.
0 special brushes.
I mean, it's just you got to know your weaknesses and strengths
Yeah, I
and,
know.
and really just
I
like
just
see what
want-
you can do with simple things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So cool.
Killing me. Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, Luke Choice.
Cool.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for
man.
having
Thank
me.
you.
Super
This has been
fantastic.
awesome.
That's awesome. Thanks so
Yes.
much.
More later, guys. Thank you.